Well, joining us now from Edinburgh is the businessman Kevin Haigh, who wants Scotland to remain in the UK. And here in the studio is Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp from the pro-independence organisation Business for Scotland. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us this evening. Gordon, sales to the rest of the UK are worth 4 times as much as to the EU. Does this not highlight the importance of Scotland being in the Union and a single market with the rest of the UK?
Well, absolutely, but I think it's actually a problem for unionists, because what that really highlights is a complete imbalance of trade. Scotland's got all of its eggs in the one basket, and the reason for that is that for 30-odd years, successive chancellors since Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister have been artificially increasing the value of the pound using high interest rates, which has meant that Scottish exports are too expensive and the rest of the world can't afford them. So we've been forced to actually trade with the UK, which shares our currency, and it's been holding our international exports back. So we've got all our eggs in the one basket, and with Brexit and the ridiculous plans or lack of plans for Brexit that we're seeing, I think Westminster's been very reckless with that basket.
Let's put that to Kevin. Has Scotland been held back internationally because of the Union?
I don't see quite how Gordon can make that argument. He seems to be arguing for massive devaluation of whatever currency we should be using in Scotland.
We've just had that since Brexit.
Hang on 1 second.
The reality is that, as your package rightly showed, we sell 4 times as much to the rest of the UK than we do to the EU. That is as a result of 40 years of unfettered market access to the EU. Scotland has had the opportunity to develop that market and has done a decent job of it. But you can't overcome the realities of geography, of language, and indeed of history, which mean it's pretty much inevitable that if we have access to a free UK market, that we will sell more to that market than having access to a free EU market, which is further away, over the water, and where a lot of the trade is services in a different language.
Gordon, it makes more economic sense to trade with the rest of the UK.
Everybody trades with the nearest neighbour more than other people, but I think the core problem here has been that in order to follow a financial services and banking strategy, the UK has been artificially increasing the value of the pound, and that has actually decimated Scottish engineering, Scottish manufacturing. It's cost jobs certainly across the central belt, and it's closed down manufacturing businesses and deindustrialised Scotland, which has meant that the companies that would export have actually been going out of business. Now, Germany took a different route. They became the European manufacturing, engineering and exporting powerhouse, and any credibility that following the financial services route ever had went with the crash. And I think that Scotland, as a member of the European Union, an independent country, provided that the negotiations around tariffs go the right way, could actually see itself with a huge opportunity to increase its exports internationally and still trade with the rest of the UK.
Huge opportunity, Kevin?
Well, as is so often the case with these debates, we get into a kind of cognitive dissonance between believing there are going to be barriers between the EU and the UK and then arguing that there won't be if Scotland's independent. You either believe there are going to be barriers or you don't. If there are going to be barriers between the EU and the UK, we have a decision to make. Are we on the UK side of those barriers, or are we on the EU side of those barriers? It is clearly the case, as Gordon rightly says, you trade more with your closer geographic partner. It is clearly the case that we would stay on the side of that barrier where we currently have 4 times as much sales as we have to the rest of the EU. So quite how that then becomes an opportunity to separate ourselves from the single United Kingdom market, I don't understand.
Let's address this issue of the tariffs. Are you saying that there'll be no tariffs between an independent Scotland in the EU and the rest of the UK out with the EU?
It all depends on the deal done, and we don't know what deal is going to be done. We won't know until Article 50 is actually enacted, and we probably won't know until several months of negotiations.
But the SNP says it'll be the hardest of hard Brexits, which means out with the single market, which does mean tariffs.
If it is the hardest of hard Brexits, then Theresa May has already said that we'd follow a different economic route, which would be low pay, it would be low government spending, low welfare, low regulations to try and make ourselves more competitive. And I don't think the people of Scotland who voted against Brexit want to be part of that sort of UK. But the thing about tariffs is a really important point about tariffs, and that is that the EU will want to hurt the UK, but it won't want it to hurt it in a way that will hurt itself, and tariffs go both ways. I think the EU and the UK will go to negotiations both of them hoping there's a way to avoid tariffs, hoping there's a way to keep open borders. And I think the EU will look at things like financial passporting, which will hurt the City of London, and potentially create tens of thousands of jobs in Scotland.
Will the hardest of hard Brexits be, what will that mean for the Scottish economy? Will that be good for the Scottish economy? Kevin?
I mean, no, I don't think Brexit in itself is good for the Scottish economy. Unfortunately, that vote has happened. It won't surprise many people to know that I was not in favour of Brexit. However, if Brexit is happening, as in your package, the point was made, we shouldn't have to choose. The only way we have to choose between the European single market and the UK single market is if we have another independence referendum, as if we start responding to being taken out of the EU by trying to also take ourselves out of the UK. And if you have to choose between those two markets, I'd rather we didn't. But if you do have to choose logically, rationally, purely on the economics, and there are other arguments, but purely on the economics, you surely have to choose the United Kingdom market.
Okay,
it's not going to be a choice. I think basically we can. If the right deal is done, there's open borders, as Theresa May has promised to Ireland, and no product tariffs,
not a hard Brexit.
then it can be a huge advantage to Scotland.
We'll have to come back to this another time, and I'm sure we will, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.